All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the CRAQT podcast. As usual, we have Catherine, myself, Brian, we have Quinn,
They then pronounce please.
we have Allison,
Hi.
we have Trey, CRAQT, get it? I came up with that, so please like it. So today we're going to be talking about an interesting, topic. I think I also came up with this, so please find it interesting. So I want to start with a story, like I did last time I hosted, right? And this is kind of one that I think a lot of people do know, but I think it's funny, and hopefully you guys don't know and see all that when I say it, right? Is that it was a long time ago. There were philosophers. This place called Greece. Maybe you've heard of it. I don't know. And one of the more famous ones was Plato, right? And he would try to categorize things because that was sort of like Greek philosophy is kind of a lot of categorizing things. You're trying to figure out what things are by defining them and whatnot. And one time, he said, you know what, I'm going to define man. And man is a featherless biped. So it's basically it's a thing that walks on 2 feet, doesn't have any feathers. Then there was this guy named Diogenes. He was like a homeless guy, and he was pretty funny. I wrote a 10-page paper on him, so you think I know more about him, but I kind of forgot a lot of that stuff. But I did remember this, because I thought this was hilarious. Is that one day, he walks in on Plato, and he's got a chicken that he's plucked all the feathers off of, and he says, "Behold, man." Right? So he's basically said, "No, Plato, you dumb bitch. That's not what a man is, because this is a fucking chicken, okay? You moron."
I've heard that story.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular story. It's very funny. I looked it up a little while ago to make sure it was real, and it seems like, as real as any story from ancient Greece is. It's as verified as we can verify things from back then. So why that story? Well, because today we're going to be talking about the human inclination to categorize things. And I think that this is very, cross-cultural, because at the same time, or around the same time, there were the Asian philosophers, particularly the Taoists, that tried to define everything in terms of kind of opposites, like saying, if something's beautiful, something has to be ugly. So it's, again, categorizing things and saying, this belongs in this box, and this belongs in that box.
Is that where yin and yang came from?
Kind of. I think that's a Confucian idea more. They all sort of did this. But it can be, because that's not necessarily that they might have used yin yang. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's more original from the Confucian thing. But yeah, the Tao Te Ching often talks about, things are what they are because of the opposite. A thing couldn't exist without its opposite, because it's only definable relative to its opposite. Like, again, you can't find something beautiful. You're like, oh, that's beautiful. It's like, what does that mean? Well, it's not this other thing. It's ugly. It's kind of what that means. And I think that we see that human inclination to categorize things a lot. We keep talking about things like Quinn would know a lot about this. Like the gender identity thing is categorizing human beings into certain things. So what do you guys think about just that as a broad topic? Any comments?
It can be more specific.
Yeah, I think the point is to take it wherever you want to take it, Trey. What do you categorize? I categorize my books alphabetically, not by author, because I only have usually one book by a particular author. But how do you categorize things?
I mean, it depends on what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has their own system or way of organizing things.
Well, let me put it in a different. Let me make a positive, more philosophical question. A lot of people, they get really, really high on like DMT or something, and they're like, I just came to this great realization, this original realization that no one's ever come to before. We're all one thing, man.
Humans.
We're all one thing. Well, no, the whole universe is just one thing a lot of the times, I'll say. And yet humans seem to be really interested in saying, no, we're not. We're all a bunch of very, very different things. What do you guys think? You think we're all different things?
Wouldn't I go with the pronoun things?
Well, it's strange to think about how individualistic we all want to strive to be, and at the same time, we even categorize ourselves. Kind of like how Ryan brought up, we categorize ourselves by gender. We have male, female, and non-binary, and non-binary, anything under the non-binary umbrella. And it's weird because there are also stereotypes, at least for men and women. Non-binary kind of is a gray area because it's not part of that binary that everyone or a lot of people in society feels like we have to fit into. And I think it's pretty cool that as we continue to evolve, I suppose is a good word, that we broaden our categories and allow for people to expand outside of just box A or box B. So instead of like gay for men and lesbian for women, anyone can be bi or pan. And you don't have to be a man or a woman. You could be non-binary or agender or gender fluid. And it's just, I'm losing my words.
Mhm.
It's just really cool now that we have all more categories, and we don't have to be boxed into just one or two anymore. We can jump in between or have our hands in two or three. Obviously, we don't have three hands, but like you get the metaphor.
I'm a computer science major, so everything I think of is in terms of binary. So I have no idea what they were just talking about. I'm just kidding.
No, honestly, I think like okay, so as you say, like us in the United States, we tend to categorize a lot of stuff because even in elementary, middle school, and high school, we categorize ourselves in social groups. Like you got the jocks, you have the nerds. Even at my school, we had like the soccer players, and we had like the rednecks and everything, and yeah,
What's yeah, more?
yeah,
Go ahead.
and then yeah.
I thought-
Yeah, the theater kids, we hung out together. So, like, everybody had their own little social group. And then, not only that, we be categorized in for our race and ethnicity and everything. So, black, white, Hispanic, rather than just being, you know, yeah, human as a whole or just yourself.
And cultures as well.
Honestly, I think, well, obviously everybody categorizes everything because I mean, there's a time and a place for it, but I feel like we shouldn't be trying to put ourselves in boxes. Honestly, why do you want to? I mean, I understand the people like wanting to be able to define themselves, like, hey, I'm this, this, and this. But I feel like that's just boxing us into like certain beliefs or well, I said I'm this, so I have to behave like this, or I am this, so I have to behave like this because this is what people expect of people of this, or things of that nature, you know?
So,
Go ahead.
so I would say that a lot of people categorize themselves into certain categories and stuff like that, not just to help define themselves, although that is important for a lot of people because we're all kind of figuring ourselves out, especially at this age that we're all in our 20s. We're still figuring ourselves out. Yes.
Got it all figured out.
Sure. But it's less about boxing ourselves in and rather to me it's less boxing ourselves in to different categories but finding community within people that are similar in the category. We're not the same. Me as a non-binary person is not going to be the same as the next non-binary person. And also to what you said about I have identified myself or have labeled myself as this, so I have to act this way. Honestly, fuck expectations, fuck what people think you ought to be. Because we're all humans, we're all trying to figure shit out. And no one's going to be the same thing, even if, like, it's like if saying, expecting music to all be the same genre. It's impossible. There's just too much imagination, too much creativity to all box it into a single genre. It's all music, just like we're all human beings, but we're so very different. And like the way Ryan acts like a guy is not the same way that you act like a guy. And it's nothing like femininity versus masculinity in either of you. It's just the way you were raised and how you decide to portray yourself. And that's super cool. You both are guys, but you don't act like the same kind of guy is kind of like that. There's no
Yeah,
wrong way.
I
See where I'm
am the
getting at?
biased guy that's in the guy. It's just-
You guys see where I'm getting at though?
There's no wrong way of humaning.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there
okay,
is.
and I have a
Being a
question
cannibal,
for-
that's a wrong way.
I have a question for Kat.
It's only sexually attracted to meat.
Yes.
But
yeah, no, I don't want to explain that.
But yeah,
she's
I'm
more
not-
on sexual.
I'm not out yet.
She's more on sexual.
But I believe,
Yeah,
but I
pretty
believe
much.
that categories do have a time and a place. Because, like, think about it. Everybody at this table has a category. Catherine has several categories. You have a category. You have a category. You have a category. And you have a
Like,
category.
how come I'm the only one
I
that
was
doesn't
gonna say, how
have
come Kat
categories?
only has several?
Because
I
I
have
made this
several.
cat.
And I have categories. So, look, think about it this way. Me and Ryan would be males, and then Catherine and yourself would be females, and then you'd be non-binary. So there's that category, and then there's a racial category where it'd be the three of y'all, and then me and Allison.
Cat, not exactly.
Yeah.
No, I'm not white.
Cat's mixed.
I'm mixed.
I know that you're mixed, but I'm just saying there's several ways to portray it. You know?
Well, I wanted to sort of, sort of extension your point, and like I kind of half agree, half disagree with your point earlier. Is that you were like, yeah, people, like why do people categorize themselves? They shouldn't, categorize themselves. Almost was your point because that
Well, I mean,
that
like,
box is
every
in.
aspect of their lives.
Right. And so like where I disagree with that and agree with Quinn is that yes, I think that someone should be an individual, but it is also very obvious that people are group oriented. We're very negative or positively, we're very tribalistic. We seek out communities. We're
We have
social
pack
creatures.
Pack mindset?
We don't
Pack
want to
mentality.
be
Pack
the-
mentality.
And so since we're
But not exactly that alpha beta bullshit.
right, we like to be in groups is what I'm saying. And so having a category that is broad enough
It
for
makes
other
us
people
feel
to
like
fit
we
in
belong.
makes you feel like you belong. But then I agree with you in that a lot of the times people do look at their category and define themselves so much by that category. Like I am, I don't know, a fan of this football team. Like I'm a Green Bay Packers fan, right? And they define themselves so much by that
So,
that one, they're mean to people that aren't on their team, and two, that they act in a way like, oh, the Green Bay Packers, they had like a bad game the other day, but they feel like they can't say that because other fans will be like, you're not a real fan, So they will change themselves to sort of fit into that category and not act in a way that is true to themselves on an individual basis. And I think that that's wrong also.
Or it affects how they act the next day. Like Green Bay Packers having a bad day, like on the field, suddenly they make them essentially kind of like make themselves have a bad day the next day because they feel shitty because their team
Right.
didn't do
They
well.
wrap their emotional well-being in something that's out of their control, which
Please
is
don't do that.
Yeah.
Please don't
Yeah.
do that.
Quinn is a stoic. We found this out today.
Yeah, they let a label really define who they are as a person.
Yeah, I agree. Catherine, opinion.
I don't really have an opinion. Besides, I was a lot of things in high school, but that's mostly because, like, you're searching yourself, you're a baby, you don't know what the hell you want in life and all that other stuff. So, I was in sports and I was in theater, and I did competitive kind of ish. So it's like, oh, I'm this, but I'm also this just because I can be. Like, it doesn't necessarily matter. But that's also because I went to a very diverse school, so no one really gave a shit
Mhm.
about what you really did. Because everyone knew each other, and it didn't really matter. But, it's the same thing. There are categories, and people make it a big deal because if they're probably, I don't know, just lonely and sad.
Mhm.
That's my opinion.
I think I kind of agree with that. I think that a lot of people, if they fall too much into the category trap, if you want to call it that, and define themselves by so many things and label themselves this way to such a degree that they allow the label to define them rather than finding a label that works for the way they define themselves, is that they will they're doing this and they don't know who they are really, and so they're never going to be happy because there's a disconnect between their internal, their subconscious and the way they identify or something like that. So I do want to change from, because we've been talking about like gender and then we kind of went to the football thing. And I think that's something that's interesting. I think a lot of Americans don't really think about this because we're kind of a melting pot, is that identity used to be wrapped up a lot more in, we did kind of touch on this with the race and the ethnicity thing, but it also used to be defined a lot by your religion. right? Until sort of like Napoleon came along and was like, actually, we're a nation. So now, even though we're all different races and genders, ethnicities, religions, Napoleon, yeah, he was very. I mean, I'm not saying he was the single person that made this change, but one thing that he did was that he basically said, "This is what a good Frenchman is." Right.
Gotcha.
So he defined it different. Like it used to be a good Frenchman was just a good Christian. You weren't really a Frenchman, but he was like, no. A good Frenchman is a member of the military. They fight for their country. He sort of took the group mentality from the religion in France to being a French person, to identifying that way. And Americans, we do that to an incredible degree where we are Americans, and that's our identity a lot of the time. And that's why we can't understand a lot of these conflicts, like, not to get controversial, but like the Israel-Palestine conflict has a lot to do with identity and ethnicity and religion, and not so much to do with like a political nationality. That's why it's difficult for us to wrap our minds around those kinds of conflicts, I think. And so that's another way that categories I think have changed over time, is that we often define ourselves by the political boundaries we live within. How do you guys feel about that?
It's interesting that you pointed out that it used to be more based on like your religion made you a good person of X nation, but yeah. And I think we've started, especially like in America, we've started to slowly start drifting back to that, which is honestly because we're a melting pot and there are so many different cultures and religions and just different viewpoints, even within the same religion.
Mm-hmm.
It can be it's almost kind of scary if that we're going back to that, because I can almost guarantee that if you walk up to someone and they're full on, I'm American, it's going to be not just I'm American, but I'm Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very much like you can't have one without the other, which is.
I don't totally disagree with what you're saying, but I do think that is a very, very recent thing in America. Like if you look at America post 9/11, it doesn't matter what religion, what creed, whatever. Everyone was like, we got to go get them. USA, USA. So it depends a lot on the propaganda at the time as well. And I think I agree with you that we're siding that way. But I think if you go to if you go to Palestine or Israel and you say America, we're all unified Christians. They would laugh in your face and go, no, you are not.
Yeah.
So it is a relative term also.
Mm-hmm.
But I see I don't disagree with everything you're saying. What do you guys jump in?
Yeah, I feel like I'm overpowering the conversation a bit along with Ryan.
That's perfectly fine.
I mean,
because we're going with heavy topics here on the categorization thing. We can go lower with this too.
Yeah, we can chill out.
Yeah. What do you guys have feel about categories?
I mean, I still think the same. I still think that there's a time and place for it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like although everyone does have categories, I don't think you should let it overrule your personality. Mm-hmm. So, for Allie's case, she wouldn't be like the quote unquote definition of like a black female. And I wouldn't say that I'm the quote unquote definition of a black male either. And I'm pretty sure you can say the same for yourself and you yourself. And
I am the
yourself.
whitest man that's ever been a white man.
I am pretty pale, but
I know,
because being non-binary is such a nebulous thing in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, we're not.
I am not the quintessential non-binary person.
You are. Your name's Quinn.
I am not. I am not the end all be all of what a non-binary person looks like.
Yeah, and I really think that people, and I even think that sometimes little kids do interpret that, because we have so many labels out there now, and sometimes I feel like it can be a little bit damaging to kids who are still figuring themselves out, because they're like, well, everybody around me is this, and I might be this, and I don't want to bring up that conversation, because y'all know what conversation that leans towards. But I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that we should just slowly move in that direction. But don't let labels overwhelm you. And just because all your friends are this, that doesn't mean you have to be this. If you have opposing views than your friend group, then that's fine. If they don't respect you because of that, then
get new
y'all
friends.
shouldn't be friends in the first place.
That's it.
Let's hop off the religious train.
Well, I do want to say that the theory of the Big Bang Theory was posed originally by a Catholic theologian, actually.
I actually never watched the Big Bang
I did.
Theory. I'm sorry, I have not watched the Big Bang Theory.
I'm talking about the actual thing.
The actual theory,
Oh.
not
The
the
actual
show.
Big Bang Theory.
Oh.
The idea that the
Now
world was
I'm
created from
not
explosion.
interested.
That is so.
But yeah, let's get back on track. Let's not
We were kind of on track.
It's
It's
an
still a
important-
category.
Yeah.
But what do you guys?
Well, let's
I mean,
not-
go back to what you
let's
just like.
not fall down
Let
the
you
religious
finish your
rabbit
question
hole.
actually about Christianity.
This is what happened when we're next to each other, apparently, is that we go too deep and everyone else is kind of left behind. And I apologize, but I'm very intrigued.
Like, even something so simple as categorizing would be our food, literally. Like, we have vegetables,
And
fruits, and meats.
And then we argue what's actually a fruit.
Exactly.
Like a tomato.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Catherine,
Yeah.
I got a question for you.
What's
So-
your question?
How do you think labels shape the way that you grew into the person you are now?
To the person I'm now? That's kind of crazy. Labels.
Like being like being
Sorry,
cis,
I just heard labels,
and
labels, and I
things
heard
like
the
that.
Gradle song.
So, I'm sorry. Question that?
Like, yeah,
How did
like
labels develop
how
into the
did-
person you are?
yeah, like I know you're mixed, so that was like a label
Yeah.
that was somewhat placed upon you
Yeah,
without your knowledge. Like,
that's
how
true.
do labels like shape the person that you are today?
Okay, well, first of all, with that, I was either under the category that I was some sort of like god, because I am mixed and I'm the beauty standard in, I guess, Asia. I guess that's what that is, or in the Philippines in a generalization. A lot of actresses are either, you can see them being half Filipino, half Australian, half Filipino, half Irish, half Filipino, and obviously I'm half white, but my descendants are, I think, are Irish and British or whatever. So it's shut up. So there was, I mean, like, it was something that I didn't really notice, but you know, I think I was treated better than other people, and that's apparent. Like me and like, I grew up in a military base, so me and my mom and the Filipino wives who were in the military, they would like wait on their husbands and stuff, and we've had like Filipino parties and stuff like that, and like they would call me like Miss Americana, or like, oh wow, Anak, your face is like so snow white, it's so beautiful, and like it's really even more fucked up that even in the Asian culture they have like they have products to make your skin whiter and stuff like that as well,
I've seen those.
because
I think
that's the
blows my mind.
that's becoming the beauty standard and stuff.
Mhm.
And I mean that is period. Like, yes, like I think I'm very pretty, but like
You
my native people, they're also very pretty. So it's like it really sucks that they're gonna have this view that like being mixed is such like a like the number one thing that you can be, so people become ashamed of their culture. Even like when I was just like sometimes I even saw myself like more as white or Filipino. It was a mixture between both. It was never both at the same time, because I really didn't like comprehend that stuff at all. But I mean, there were moments where my Filipino-ness outshined in schools, like elementary school. It was
She said she
mostly
was smart.
no, no. I was not. No, when I meant outshine, I meant like they knew I was Asian and they would bully me because I was Asian. So, like for example, there was this girl, and she would be like, "Oh, you're this because you're Chinese, but I'm not Chinese." And then she would do the eye thing, like the fox eye thing. And then, and this person I considered my friend, and I thought she was my friend, but you know, I'm a child, so like everyone's my friend when I'm a kid. And like, I was like, that feels mean, but I don't understand the concept of racism at that time, and like, no one really taught me much about that. And I was like, cause it's like, she makes jokes like, oh, it's cause you're Asian. Oh, it's cause you're Asian. And then I'm like, but when I say, one time at gym, I compared to her bullying towards a black girl. And I was like, but if I said that to her, then it would be wrong. Because I was said if I tell her, oh, it's because she's black, that would be wrong. And then she twisted my words and made it seem I was being racist to the black girl. And so everyone thought I was being racist to the black girl, despite me telling her, like, hey, this is what it sounds like. So it was like a weird, like, conflict there. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I was gaslight, girl boss, gatekept for real. Yeah.
It's interesting to
yeah.
me because, like, what Trey was saying about the kind of getting in the category, defining yourself that way, is that when it sounds like to me when you're mixed, it's sort of like there are these two categories. There's Filipino, and there's American or white, and you're both. And so it's literally impossible to pick one of those categories.
So
you feel
just
like you're expected.
yeah, so just like I had to learn the hard way to just not pick one category. Like, I'm both regardless. Like, shit, I eat hot dogs with rice, and sometimes I just eat hot dogs with a fucking bun, you know, with my little fucking Filipino ketchup and my tomas. But, like, you know, I grew up in both cultures, like both white and Filipino. So I was, despite the history of the Philippines, I know nothing about that shit. But, like, despite it, I was still raised Filipino regardless.
Mm-hmm.
But I was still bullied for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that person sees this because it's true.
Yeah. You know,
Why would you say, Ryan, what would you say is one label or something or like a category that somebody placed you in that you felt didn't really align with you or you were strongly conflicted with?
Well, okay, so first I want to say what I was about to say, which is, because it's just a short thing, is that it kind of reminds me, have you guys ever seen that commercial? It's like a Japanese commercial, and they're advertising for a laundry wash, and they put like a black guy in a washing machine and a white guy comes out. It's so messed up, right? So,
Can you quickly say something too, real quick, to what Kat was saying?
Yeah.
I don't understand why the Eurocentric white pale beauty standard is the standard. Like, I am pale as hell. I don't. It's boring. I'm sorry. To me,
it's
even,
boring because we're used to it, though, right?
Yeah.
I suppose. Okay.
But it's almost like how we find, like,
Sorry.
well, some people find like accents attractive. I'm not really a big fan, but it's because it's boring, right? That's what I think it probably is. I
Okay.
think because Americans sort of sometimes will fetishize other regions.
That's true.
Because I don't want to I don't want to dismiss anyone else's like experience or like desire to look a certain way. That's not what I mean. I was just saying I don't
Right.
get it.
I agree with you. But to answer your question, Trey, is I find questions like that often very difficult. One, because I've always had a pretty good sense of self, I feel like, so it's difficult for other people to put me in a label that I haven't already expressed, like what my label is. But also, because I was homeschooled, I wasn't put in a lot of situations where I could be bullied or anything. You know, it was really just my mom. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so like I was never confronted I was social, and I would have things like I was in sports and I did, Boy Scouts, and I had things like that. But because those things were, either like in sports, sometimes it'd be 1 hour a day, maybe, we go practice and then games, but it's the 1 or 2 hours doing something. It wasn't like we were chit chatting, so there wasn't a whole lot of room for bullying, maybe hazing every once in a while, but nothing about putting me in a category. And then in Boy Scouts, we were all there to, learn about knots or whatever the fuck we were learning about, right? And so, it was still a group of young men. There was, again, bullying and hazing, stuff like that, but it was rarely targeted at me, and when it wasn't like putting me in a label or anything like that.
So you never felt boxed in growing up?
So I never really felt like boxed in by anything, because I was always pretty much left to my own devices to figure out. I think that's why I have a good sense of self, because I was allowed to find myself without external pressure putting me in certain boxes, and without any expectations of, you got to be a jock, or you got to be this, or you got to be, because in high school, it's almost like being in prison, where you got to find a gang to sort of protect you, right? But I never had that, so I never was forced into a particular box of any kind.
I'll talk about my categories when I was like in middle school. It's kind of funny. I used to be emo. I
Used to
believe it. I was like, make sure you zoom in on the tattoo. I believe in you. So this is My Chemical Romance tattoo. So obviously I was an emo kid. So I was emo in high school. Nope, just middle school. I think I was more grungy, or whatever the fuck I was in high school. I don't know.
She
Like
said
I
that
said-
she was like a hype beast.
I was
in high school.
no. That's like my junior year,
Oh,
senior
yeah.
year. I was 100% a hype beast. Like my styles my styles are definitely influenced by like my friends' styles because I was like, oh my god, that's so cute. Oh my god, that's so cute. And then I'm like, oh shit, I think I was definitely more a follower in school. So it was really hard for me to get out of that mentality when I had to move here. Because I moved here starting off with like no friends, just family, no job, no nothing. I mean, I lived with my dad, but that's a vibe. And like college, and I started with a community college, so like no friends, period, for about like a year and 6 months. So let's go with that. And so, like in middle school, I was into hard rock bands. I would like things that other people would like. Like, I mean, I liked anime, but I got deep into it. And so I guess I was like a weeb at the time too. So I'd make like little fan fictions and stuff as well. But I didn't necessarily like One Direction, but like I forgot who's talked about it. Like you just follow people who like that thing, and then slowly it becomes your thing, and you're like, yeah, I like this too. You either end up liking it or not liking it, but you still have that like, oh shit, what if they found out I don't like it and they stop being my friend? So it's like I was also a people pleaser too. So I had a lot of like, but I think it's because I was also an only child, so I didn't really have a lot of, I mean, I had a lot of opportunities for self-identity for sure, but I wasn't really raised that way. It was more like, you got to make your appearance good around other people more so. Be clean and happy. And, like in high school, shit, like I said, I was in theater and in sports, so you can call me Troy Bolton if you want to. But it was definitely like a different arena, and I'd have these birthday parties where my friend groups would mix together, but like they wouldn't all hang out together. They would just hang out in their separate groups, which was very interesting. So I would have to walk from one group to another, and it was really weird because it's like, bro, we're across the pool. Y'all can just all talk to each other. We all go to the same high school. Like, it doesn't matter. So it was like really weird to maneuver around that too, because like you already know who your friends are. Even if you have different friends, it's kind of interesting. But like getting out of that mentality of like, oh,
Gang.
I'm not, yeah, gang mentality, high school mentality. Shut up. I mean, it was hard. It was like a lot of like mental breakdowns about like who I am and who I'm going to become in the future and all this other shit. But like my therapist told me to try everything that I want to try and not really follow the societal stuff of what we expect. Like, we're in that age where we're supposed to try everything and anything, and that's one thing that I got it from, and that just blew my mind. So now I just like what I like, and I don't really care. It turned into the I don't give a fuck mentality, which is like, now it's my thing.
That's what you're supposed to be.
Yeah, so because I don't fucking care anymore.
Is that bitch mentality?
Yeah.
I will say, I was thinking about your question a little bit more deeply, and while I've never been put into a label that I don't think necessarily fits me, per se, I do think that there are, obviously, I think everybody here will relate to this even more than I am saying, but there are sometimes preconceptions about categories that I put myself into. So, for example, the fact that I'm homeschooled frequently, brings to mind very socially awkward, incredibly religious, stereotypes about that thing. So there's never been labels that have been thrust upon me that I dislike, but there have been assumptions about the labels that I do take on, like being homeschooled, that have connotations that are not necessarily what I associate with them. And what I was kind of getting at is obviously, you are black, so you probably experienced racism, right? And so there are those kinds of preconceptions that are maybe more impactful with more people. But so I've experienced that sort of the flip side of your question, I guess, whatever exactly your question.
What about you, Boyd?
I mean, the elephant in the room is that, I mean, I'm sure you can still kind of tell because I'm still early in my journey, but I was assigned female at birth. So for the longest time, up until I was 21, I felt like I was kind of forced into the category of being a girl and then being a woman. Which I never felt super connected to. There were even times where I was just like, man, I wish I was something else. Or I remember distinctly as a little kid, I said, I wish I was a boy. And then the more I thought about it, I was just like, I don't really want to be a boy either. There are just some things about that I associate with being dudes, but also just being a dude in general that I was just like, that doesn't feel right either. And it was only like once I got out of high school and started going to college, started meeting all these people, that I realized that there was more options, I guess. And I didn't have to be stuck as a girl, and being a dude was not my only other option. And now I'm non-binary, so I'm out of that. There are some other the only other category that I can specifically think about that definitely had sometimes more of a negative side to it was I was born a triplet. And you might think, oh, well, how can that be bad? Well, and I don't think this is the case for all multiples, especially if you have the right friends and stuff, but it did end up that my sisters had an easier time of making friends than I did. So it ended up being that most of their friends became my friends. I was not the one that usually made those friends initially. We were all equally friends with some of them, but I definitely wasn't the one introducing people. And then it slowly became, people are starting to have preferences over which of us they hung out with, to the point where I remember a party that I was with a bunch of my friends and my sisters, and we had overheard them talking about their favorite triplet. And no one in that group ever chose me, which was definitely hurtful at the time. And it still kind of like comes up occasionally when I think about it. And I'm kind of just like, what was wrong? What was so wrong with me that no one chose me out of me and my two other sisters? And then it's kind of like middle school and high school, we started doing different things, and my two sisters would a lot of the time actually do the same thing, and I would be off on the other doing something else. They did strings, I did band. They stayed in ROTC in high school. They stayed in ROTC for all 4 years. I only stayed for 2. It was kind of like that back and forth, and it almost felt like I was always the other constantly. And that definitely was a category, something that was more put on me. And I played it off. I thought I kind of made it into a joke, like, I'm the other one. Nice to meet you. Because a lot of them didn't even know my name at some point, because they had known Aaron and Katie, who were my sisters, but just had never come across me until a certain point. And I'm just like, oh, you probably have heard of me, but I'm just the other one, kind of thing.
Okay, and can I ask you a quick question about that?
Sure.
Do you feel like you always tried to look for I know you said that they were in strings and you were in band. So were you trying to be like an outlier, or like you were like, oh, I want to do this, but they're doing that? Was it like that, or was it more you always felt, or you always felt like you had interests outside of them?
I think it was more interest outside of them, because I really fell in love with the band program. It's what I wanted to do. So that's just what happened. With the ROTC thing, that was more because I was being bullied that they weren't, which was fun. It's not so much I'm a contrarian as it is I just had different interests. Or for example, they both went to Lander starting in 2018. My first 3 years of college weren't actually here at Lander. They were at Anderson University for a completely different major. At Anderson University, I was a music education student. And it wasn't because I didn't like Lander. It just so happened that Anderson had a better music education program with practically a 100% higher right out of graduation rate. And the thought process was, if I'm going to see this all the way through, I want to go with a program that has a 100% higher rate. It just so happened that after 3 years of pushing myself to do 18 plus hours every semester, that I burnt myself out and realized that's not what I wanted to do. So I took a year off, and then I came here. where my sisters were both finishing up their degrees, and now I'm the only one here. So
I have a question for Allie. What do you? I feel like you have a lot of categories. So what are your categories, Allie? I feel like you have interesting categories. Because, am I allowed to talk about that you're adopted?
Mhm.
Okay, so you're adopted. How does that? How does that work with you in your mind and when it comes to categorization? I guess.
Well, my mom adopted me when I was a baby. I was 2 years old, and she didn't adopt anyone else. So, I was an only child. And being raised as an only child, you kind of, I have to say, I was privileged, not to brag.
Facts, me too.
Yes. I did Girl Scout camp every summer. I took tennis lessons. I went to Broadway camp. I had a birthday party every year. More than the average kid, I would say.
You're lucky that Stuart Little wasn't in that.
yeah,
Half the space you
But at the time when I was younger, I kind of overlooked it. Man, I don't have nothing. But now that I'm at the age I'm in now, I'm like, wow, I really had a lot. At the time, I didn't think so.
Yeah.
But not only that.
yeah.
But no, I actually talk to everybody. I always saw everyone as the same. I still get the phrase there's not a stranger to me because I just go and talk to everybody. So middle school, high school, I didn't care who you were. I just come up and start talking to you. Teachers would literally put the quiet kid beside me because Allison would get them to talk, and Allison got them to talk to me.
Now she interviews people for a living, so I guess that
Scares the
tracks.
crap out of them.
Literally, we had a kid moved from California to my middle school, and literally her first day in class, she was so shy and quiet. She sat beside me, and I was like, "So, you Team Edward or Team Jacob?" And we've been friends ever since. And then even in high school, like I said, I participated in everything from soccer, theater, tennis, the basketball team, being in the yearbook, you name it. I was literally everything. And then I was just that person that Alice that I was like, it was like, yo, who don't know Allison? Allison be talking to everybody. Allison cool. I didn't have a mean boy in my body, and I didn't judge nobody.
The reputation precedes you.
Exactly. And then, I know, what was your question? Oh, wait, before you ask that question.
Okay.
So, but when I was saying that I was privileged, because I was privileged, I was layered as being the quote unquote, the black girl that acts white, because I'll be the only black girl at the tennis.
Were you adopted by a white family?
No, I wasn't. Yeah. Like I said, I was adopted into a middle class family. Yeah, my mom's a teacher and everything, master's degree and etc. Guidance counselor.
Sick.
Yeah, and she's a single parent, so.
I was hoping you were adopted by a white family, then you'd be like the media and communications version of The Blind Side.
I'm dead. But no, because not many, black kids played tennis or could afford going to the CRAQT Center and play tennis every summer. And then Broadway camp was really expensive too, so there wasn't really a bunch of black kids with that. So they was like, oh, Allison must be rich because she's doing this, or Allison. And then how I talk, sometimes I sound very educated. So it's like, Allison's like a white girl. She don't act black. I'm like, what? And even some of my black friends, they like to go out and party and do this. I'm like, I'm not into that. I'd rather do my media stuff or go on vacation and travel rather than party and shake my butt. I'm not into that.
True, but I think that falls under labeling and prioritization too.
Exactly. Oh, but what was your question?
It wasn't a question. I was just gonna make a joke, but it was kind of mean.
Okay.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm surprised that you played basketball.
That was the joke. That was the joke.
I know. I was.
Thank you, Allie. Thank you so much for not leaving me hanging.
Yes.
I'm sorry. That was the joke. I was just like,
I know. I was point guard. Okay. My
Nice.
coach. My
Okay,
coach
that
was
makes
like,
sense.
Allison, you have one job. Get on that floor and get that ball. What did I do? I
Get it.
tackled on that floor and got that ball.
Oh, you played like my sister.
Yeah,
Well, one of the sisters.
I was an ankle biter, bro. I went and got that ball.
I went.
my sister. This particular sister played 80% of church basketball on the floor. Was how often she would fight for the ball and end up on the floor, which was very funny. And then she went on to play rugby.
Now, you know what's crazy though? I get on my mom all the time, Mom, I was so flexible when I was younger. I was like, why didn't you put me in gymnastics? I could have been the next Simone Biles.
LOL. I was in gymnastics.
Yeah. She was like, it's not too late now. I'm like, no, I can't do gymnastics now.
I learned about that.
I must be really racist because they were surprised that you play basketball because you're high, but I'm like, yeah, it makes sense.
Douche.
Oh my God, Ryan.
No, Ryan, that's for the.
Yeah.
That's where you cut it out.
Ryan, that's a.
Cut it out.
No,
Cut
Ryan,
it out.
Ryan,
I don't need two Joeys. All right.
No, Ryan, that's for the opposite spectrum.
Ryan, do you want to bring us home?
Bring it- Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, we learned
Bring it
more about-
around town.
Stop one with good. You know, I don't know. We talked a lot about categories. I mean, it's hard to sum up something. I mean, like I said at the beginning, categorizing things has been something that people
Such a
have
broad
been.
subject.
Well, it's just something that we've been engaged in since the dawn of, writing things down.
Civilization.
The dawn, from the time of ancient civilizations.
I mean, even before
Remember?
that, there were hunters and gatherers.
Yeah.
Two categories right there, my guy.
I mean, and even if they didn't, talk about themselves in that way, they clearly did categorize themselves that way, even without the language or the categorization.
Like alphas.
Like whatever.
No.
Whatever.
No, I mean like how like in tribals like you have like
Oh, the
leader and all that.
There are
That's another form.
charismatic people and uncharismatic people for sure. I think Quinn was taking umbrage with the alpha and a beta
No,
Yeah.
in the modern sense. But yeah, I get what you're saying. And yes, there were definitely categorizing even before that. But I just mean philosophy. One of the first intellectual pursuits was just categorizing things, really. And so it's hard to summarize, that without just saying, yeah, that's just what people do. We just categorize things, and sometimes it leads to good things, like a community, and sometimes it leads to bad things, like racism or whatever kind of prejudices. But it's just what we do. So that's all there is to it.
Mwah. Good night, everybody.
Guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We hope you like this episode. Bye.
See you next time.
Bye.